it may seem a little mundane, packing up boxes and, being on the assembly line. What we're really doing is putting in hundreds of hours into the people on the streets who need us. And they need us in a way that none of us will ever understand. And for the last couple of weeks, I've been on the grounds every day. They know we're coming today, they know we're coming tomorrow, and they look forward to seeing us because we're the one little bit of hope that they have a warm meal in their bellies and to know that somebody in the world is actually caring for them and loving them. And without people like you showing up today to give your time, your energy, and your spirit, none of this is possible. So I want to really say thank you to everyone, because what we're doing here today may seem small, but it's actually really, really big, and it's impacting hundreds and thousands of families. So I thank you, I love you, I look forward to doing this with you today.
My name is Serena Buffalino, and I am the founder of Help Heal Humanity. Help Heal Humanity is a charity that is focused on unconditional giving, love, and support to some of the most vulnerable communities in the world.
Have you ever struggled to find the right words to get your message out? I know I sure have. I'm excited to bring you today my special guest, LaChelle Wiseman, who is an expert in finding those right words. She is a ghostwriter and a copywriter with the mission of passionately getting the words right. Welcome, LaChelle. So glad to have you here today on Pursuing Profit with Principles.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. So we recently met, folks, and I was just so impressed with what she's doing and who she is that I knew I had to bring her to you, my audience. And so we want to find out all about you today, LaChelle. So give us a little bit of your history, if you will. It's kind of interesting how you got to this place, and I'd like them to learn a little bit about that. So who you are, how you got here, if we could start with that.
All right. So I guess you could say we can start with the fact that I was in love with books as a child. I was one of those kids who had a flashlight under the blankets at night reading Nancy Drew mysteries when I was supposed to be sleeping. Yeah. And my love for books and writing continued. When I got into high school, I fell in love with English literature and went on to do a Bachelor of Arts in English literature. Uh-huh. And I was at a crossroads as to whether or not I wanted to go into creative writing for a graduate degree or journalism. And I really wrestled with that because I wanted to write novels. But I also knew that the number of people who try to do that and who are successful is rather low. Yeah. And so I took a more practical road, which was to take journalism, and I haven't regretted that decision. So I was a print journalist, then I went into television, and I had the opportunity to actually help launch a television channel here in Canada. And after my journalism days were over, I decided, my husband at the time and I wanted to have a family. So I decided to start my own company, Inscape Communications, and be in charge of my own life and timing and schedule. And started writing for all kinds of business and government clients, starting to write public relations copy and then marketing copy and content. And that continued on until I had a brief stint for 7 years as the executive director of a national nonprofit in Canada. Then I went back to my business, back to copywriting, and just keeping up with the changes in the world of writing, and especially within the media, when the internet took over everything. And so learning to write for the internet and for websites and understanding SEO and just all of that wonderful stuff was part of my journey. And then about 7 years ago, I started recognizing that some of my clients had enough content in their blogs to repurpose it into a book. And some of those people went ahead and actually did that. Right. And then I had people come to me and say, could you coach me to write my memoir? So I kind of slid into the book coaching thing sideways and kept doing my marketing copy. And I have written an online course now called Write Your Book Now, and it is to help prepare primarily entrepreneurs that want to write a book for their business, although it's certainly still useful for memoir writers as well. And the copywriting thing has really taken off, especially with COVID, when so many people decided to leave their 9-to-5 jobs and become entrepreneurs. And now there's this huge swath of folks out there trying to launch a business, and they don't understand email marketing and how powerful it is, or how to write emails for their business. So I've stepped into that space in a big way, and I now have a course for copywriting as well. So that's me. I just kind of do anything and everything that has to do with words, whether it's books or emails.
Awesome. Well, let's unpack some of that. And I just want to say, I was one of those people who, my whole life, I thought I had a book inside of me, or for many years anyway. I thought, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. But I had no idea what that book was going to be. And ultimately, it turned out not to be fiction. It was nonfiction. My first book was on marriage, on helping people with their marriage. And then I've written, I have several business books out as well. And so I get that, that we think that we want to write a book, but I just had no idea how to write one, and no idea what it was going to be, and was an avid reader myself. There was a time when I lived in a rural community that we didn't have a library nearby. We had a bookmobile that would drive through the community periodically with books. And I would take my daughter's little red wagon out to meet the bookmobile to check out all the books that we wanted.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, I was an avid reader.
Them, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think they came like every couple of weeks or something, so it's like, I've got to get my books, So I'm right there with you. Now, you used the term repurposed content, and I want us to talk about that. But before we dive into that, I do want to back up and talk about what you mentioned about all the new folks on the scene, the new entrepreneurs coming in. And we know that brick and mortar businesses are doing less well than online businesses, I would say. Would you not? Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so these new businesses are looking at online. And if you're going to be online, you have to have a way to reach people, right? Yeah. And that way typically is either advertising or emails or, some kind of communication, and involves getting out some content. So would you talk about two terms there for me, please? What we mean by content, and then what we mean by repurposing content, because those are critically important to these new business owners.
So content is different from copy. Content is a bigger, broader term for the ideas and the knowledge and the expertise that a company has or an entrepreneur has, that you are going to use that content, those ideas, those services, those areas of expertise, and craft it into copy, which is the actual wording. So the copy, the same content could be written very differently. If the copy is for a Facebook post or ad, then it would be for something on Instagram or something on LinkedIn or something on a website page. So that's kind of the difference. And then when you look at that content, if you have been pouring a lot of energy into blogs, for instance, blogs are a gold mine of content that many business owners have, and they don't realize that from that content base, a book could be crafted rather easily
Yes.
for the business. So that's the repurposing idea, taking that existing content and sort of massaging it, maybe reorganizing it, whatever. But it's the basis for a book. You know, it's sort of like the sourdough little starter stuff that you can take it and make it into some loaves of sourdough bread. That's a weird analogy. I realize.
No, I like it. I love it. That's a great analogy. So let's talk for a minute. You mentioned another piece there that we probably need to unpack for folks a little bit. Why would you need the content different between, say, Facebook and LinkedIn, or Facebook and Instagram, or Twitter, or whatever? Why would it need to be massaged for those different platforms? Help folks understand that.
Because those platforms have different audiences. And, you know, it's sort of a well-known fact that, you know, Facebook is sort of, could be anybody, could be an executive on Facebook, but it could be, you know, a farmer, it could be a stay-at-home mom, it could be anyone, you know, unless you have built up an audience of friends who all have something kind of in common. Whereas on LinkedIn, it is very much understood that it is a business professional platform. So people are there who are in businesses, small, medium, and large, and they are there to grow their businesses, grow their network, leverage relationships that they make and connections they make on LinkedIn for their businesses. So they're looking for someone to hire. So there's this whole job piece that's underneath LinkedIn. They're looking to network to find new collaborators, new partners, new affiliates, whatever that looks like. So you're going to write very differently the language that you're going to use than on Facebook and on Instagram. Instagram's different again. So you, as a writer, you need to understand all of those different platforms and the right words for those platforms.
Very good. Very good. Yes. And I appreciate that, you know, that you're talking about creating a book from your blog, or if somebody has a podcast, same thing, right? Things can be, you can take from that material and create books. Talk to us for a moment about memoirs. You talked about memoirs and memoir writers. Who would be someone that would be a good step for them to do? Who would be your audience for that? Or who would be your ideal client? And somebody, you know, that would be value in writing that memoir, and there would be an audience for it.
So typically a memoir is not the same as an autobiography. An autobiography starts with you were born in Kansas and everything between then and now, right? There's a lot of stuff to cover. However, a memoir is more of a focused book on a stretch of time in your life when something occurred that was significant. Could be a tragedy, could be a tremendous, you know, win, like a gold medal at an Olympic event. But it's a chunk of your life, not your entire life. And so often people who have come through something traumatic, you know, an athlete who was an Olympian, got in a car accident, lost a leg, and now has fought his way back into, you know, maybe he was a hockey player and now he's doing sledge hockey, right?
Right.
So, you know, there's these triumphant personal stories of overcoming tremendous tragedy, loss, pain, whatever. Those are often turned into memoirs. It's usually a story of how I survived X, Y, and Z and came out on the other side. And this is what I learned, right?
Right. Very good. Excellent. So it's inspirational for that audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I know that you've, in the past, you've, you know, helped people actually write and publish their books, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
If a person feels, and you have a book out called Write Your Book Now, and then you have the copywriting course, right? Two separate things. What are some of the key takeaways that they might get from your book on Write Your Book Now that would help them move forward in their path?
Okay, so it's actually a course called Write Your
It
Book
is a
Now.
course also.
Right.
Okay.
So
Okay.
my course, Write Your Book Now, is based on Donald Miller's The Story Brand. And his book, he is a marketing guru who has worked with a lot of the Fortune 500 companies and done spectacular marketing things for them. His story brand idea is based on the hero's journey, which is, has come to us down through the millennia, like from the Greeks and everybody. So I take his story brand and apply that to the writing of a nonfiction book. And essentially how it goes is that most authors, especially in the nonfiction, business writing space, think of themselves as the hero. I'm the writer and I'm brilliant and I have this enormous wisdom to share with the world, and they're all going to think I'm this amazing person by the end of reading my book. There's a lot of me. There's a lot of me's and I's in there, if you may have noticed.
Right.
So instead of doing that, this methodology, the story brand, is that you're writing for a reader, and you, the person writing the book, are the guide. And the most wonderful analogy of this that most people would completely get right off the bat is the first movie in the Star Wars series. So, there's Luke Skywalker. So he's going to be the hero. We know that. Right. But he's got all kinds of problems, internal problems, external problems, big enemy, the whole thing. He meets a guide who's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi understands Luke Skywalker, his internal problems, his external problems. He provides him with the help that he's going to need to reach his goal, which is to defeat the evil empire. So he teaches him on an external skill, which is how to use the lightsaber. And the internal thing that he solves is he teaches them about the Force. So by the end of the movie, Obi-Wan Kenobi, i.e. the guide, has sort of drifted off into the background. And now, but his help is going to make Luke Skywalker the hero of the story. And this applies to a book. If you are going to write a nonfiction book, you, the writer, you're the Obi-Wan Kenobi. And your reader is the person you are going to guide through their problems, because you've got some answers, some solutions. And if they follow your advice, they have a transformation throughout reading your book, so that by the end, they are the hero of their own story.
Love it.
That is my writings course.
That's awesome. I love that. Who is your ideal client for that course? Who's the ideal person that would want to know about that course?
I would say it's an entrepreneur that wants to write a book for their business, but they are a heart-centered entrepreneur that isn't interested in being the hero of their book. They're interested in serving. And so their whole point of writing their book is that they want to guide people with problems that they know they can solve, and actually help that reader to have a transformation by the end of reading their book.
Right.
So that's the ideal person, a servant-hearted, open-hearted entrepreneur.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Boy, there's several questions in my head trying to find the right one here. So somebody's listening to us today and they're thinking, maybe I want to do this. Maybe I want to get a book out there. What would be their first steps? What would you encourage them to do?
Well, here's a statistic. 74% of people say they want to write a book.
Right.
Only 4% actually do. So the 4%, what is different about them from the other 69%. And I would say it is motivation,
Right.
discipline, and determination,
Yes.
and the ability to learn.
Oh, I love that one. Yes. Yes. And taking action, right?
Yeah, and that's the determination. Like, I'm
Yes.
going to do this no matter what.
Right. And no matter who says I can't or disbelieves in my ability, or, you know, because there's this level of discomfort
Mm-hmm.
that people around you sometimes have when you're succeeding in a way that they are not.
Yes. Oh, for sure.
And that tends to bring you down, tends to have that, you know, when you listen to that, it can have that impact of stopping you in attaining your dream or your goal.
Yeah, it's called tall poppy syndrome, right? The people that are tall. Have you ever heard that phrase?
I have not. That's a new one for me.
It's a Canadian phrase maybe, but
Okay.
it's the idea that the poppies that are poking up higher than the rest of the poppies in the field get chopped down. Because you're not allowed to do that. You have to stay with everybody else.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a great analogy for it. I like that. I'd not heard of that before. Talk to us for a moment about ghostwriting, the ghostwriting process, because somebody who's not been involved in writing a book or any part of that may not understand what ghostwriting is. And what is your ghostwriting process?
Well, this is where my background in journalism has been golden because of my experience and training in how to interview people, to pull a story out of them. And so that skill has to go on steroids to do ghostwriting, because you're essentially trying to do a mind meld with another person. It's like, can I just extract everything in your brain and stick it in my brain? This would make it all go so much better. But no, it involves intense interviewing process at the beginning, and a clear understanding between the ghostwriter and the client as to, well, what's the purpose of this book? Why are you writing it? Who is it for? Who's going to be interested in this book? And what are they going to receive by the end of reading the book? You know, people, especially if it's a nonfiction book, the phrase is, people don't buy books, nonfiction books. They buy solutions.
Good point.
And same with fiction. Fiction is, people don't buy books. They buy entertainment. So there's a promise in your book, if it's a nonfiction, that is going to provide a solution that actually helps the reader. And obviously the fiction is, people are actually entertained. So when you're writing a ghostwritten book, most often they are either memoirs of famous people, or they are people that have had some traumatic thing in their life that they've overcome, or it is a business book. And so the business ones are a little easier to handle, because there's a natural sort of flow as to, well, what's the problem? What's the solution? What's the process that why would they read your book? Because other people out there are trying to solve that same problem. So what's unique about you and your process and your company's product or whatever, right?
Right.
So it's a little more straightforward than ghostwriting a life story or a memoir. Unless the person has this crystal clear, compelling story that makes the book really sing, Right. And obviously a person who has a story that people are going to want to read.
Yes.
So
and transformation becomes an important part of that, right? Within that book, there needs to be that the reader gets a transformation. Right.
Because you really want to have that memoir, no matter who this person is. You have to write it in such a way that the maximum number of people will identify with this person, regardless of their race, of their color, of where this occurred. It has to have a universality to it, right? So that people can relate. you know,
Yes.
to the suffering, to the loss, to the pain, to the triumph, to the victory,
Right.
all of those things.
Absolutely. LaChelle, we've got about 2 minutes left, and there are two questions I'd really like to get out there. So I'm going to bundle these two together and see if you can kind of wrap an answer around the two.
Okay.
One is the why, how important it is to know why you're writing this book, what your ultimate goal is with it. And then how important is it for you to have a marketing plan when you start, you know, or before you start the book, how you're actually going to get it, because people aren't just going to find you for the most part.
Exactly. No, those are very good questions, and I will try to smush them together. Yes.
I have faith in you.
The purpose of writing the book is you have to be crystal clear on that, because that becomes sort of your North Star to make sure that everything that you write in that book fits that purpose, and that you don't get, you know, wandering off into some rabbit trail. You want to have a crystal clear purpose, and you want to have a promise. The book has to have a promise for the reader. And that's what comes on the back cover of a book, is the promise. And people read this and go, oh man, I really need this book. So that is the crystal clear part of the promise, the premise, and then delivering that. So then in terms of marketing, yes, here's the deal. It doesn't matter if you go with a traditional publisher, a hybrid publisher, a self-publishing company, or you just put the book up on Amazon all by yourself. It doesn't matter. The same thing applies, and that is that you as the author will have to do the lion's share of the marketing. So people assume that if you go with a traditional publisher, that they just take your book and fill it, you know, bookshelves with it, and it sells like hotcakes. No, wrong.
Not so. Huh?
No. In fact, if your book doesn't sell, the bookstore sends it back to the publisher. So you are still on the hook to try and have a marketing plan that includes getting book reviews even before you finish the book, and be thinking about your strategy for who I can get as that are influencers to review my book. And how am I going to market this book through my social media platforms, get other people to promote my book through their social media platforms, start building a launch committee from day one. You know, there's a whole set of things you need to do as an author to promote your book.
Fantastic. Yes, there are. It is not the end, and that's the end of it, right? There's so much more that has to come before, during, and after that. The end. That's
right. The end is isn't the beginning. The beginning should have been the beginning.
Yes. This has been great. Such valuable information here, LaChelle. Thank you so much for sharing that with our viewers. We are so delighted to have you here today. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for asking me, Regina. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. And folks, we will see you again next Monday on Pursuing Profit with Principles. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.